Okay, so this post is called Spheres of Initiation, and it was pretty much. I began making a list of UFO sightings in 2012 because there were so many, and as you can see, some of the videos are no longer up here, but a lot of them were just filmed on their cell phone and were just mysterious lights, as they tend to be. And the thing about all of this, though, is right in January. It was January 2nd of 2012. I remember the date. There was I was trying to go to bed. It was hard to, basically, and I was trying to close my eyes. I kept opening. I was opening and closing my eyes over the period of like 10 to 20 minutes that I was laying down, and I saw all of a sudden a blue ball of light like fly through my window, or like float through my window like it was nothing. And it was uh, I don't know how to explain it, but other than that, I can barely, like, I've thought about it for years now, and all I know is that I can't even remember or describe the type of light it was. It was like a blue light that was self-contained. The only thing I can liken it to is like one of those plasma balls. But even then, it was like the lights were curving back around into itself, and it wasn't really casting off any light. And um, I'd never seen anything like that, and I wasn't on any hallucinogens or even high. I was not even really tired. I was trying to get myself to go to sleep or be tired. And basically, when it happened, I freaked out, and I couldn't even scream. And at the time, one of my friends was over there, but he was already pretty much asleep. And it was in a small apartment, and I forgot, he wasn't really my roommate, but he was my friend who was there a lot. And this was in Arizona, Mesa, and it was just, I don't expect, like I've said this before when I've written about it, it's not something I expect anyone to believe, really. um, I've actually asked for it to, like, I've tried to do things to try and like call it back, basically, or evoke it, or and I know that basically the problem is that the fear and the otherness, the feeling of like, what the fuck, was so overpowering that I forgot. I still didn't even describe what happened. Basically, it flew in. I saw it and freaked out, and then it floated in and then it flew out. Like, it went a lot faster out and around the corner. And I've debated with myself, maybe it was just a light from a car, or maybe it was, flying, going somehow through the window. But the feeling that it seemed intelligent, and it was unshakable, and I had goosebumps for like 2 hours afterwards. I mean, I ended up having to get up. I looked outside, and there was no way it was like a flashlight of a person, because I had gravel right outside the window, and you definitely hear that. I hear people walking up just on my sidewalk because of the gravel that was on it. But I looked up on the internet blue orb, because I like, that's just what it was. It was a ball of light, and it was blue. And there's so many different things online, like going back to ancient times. Apparently, they're called Willow the Wisp, or Foolish Fire, which I believe when I calculated that they were the same thing. So yeah, Willow the Wisp with a Tau is Foolish Fire with a Shin. Will O the Wisp, Foolish Fire. This is a painting by Nima Andahadna of Yog Sothoth, and a magician like evoking it. Yeah, right here there was a link to a Google Earth file of all the listed, you know, military bases known to go underground. It's the uploading website has gone down. Um, I don't know if I still have that file. Anyway, beginning in the late 40s, such top secret deep underground military bases have increased to well around 100 separate facilities in the United States alone. That's supposed to be many. While many people are aware of Area 51 located on the dry Groom Lake Range in Nevada, and some are aware of the Dulce, New Mexico site, few are aware that there is an entire network of subterranean cities connected by tunnels all throughout the U.S. and the entire planet. It would appear that whatever is going on with the UFO phenomena, there must be a correlation with these secret sites, since it would be more logical for craft to have a base on the planet. And they probably have for thousands of years, and if this is the case, the problem is that this whole post, what I was going to say is that it gets into the fact that the UFO situation or phenomena isn't a physical thing. It's not like aliens from Mars or aliens from any planet. There are probably other levels of reality, which the Tree of Life kind of helps to understand. And these beings exist on other like inner planes or other planes, and that's why they would correspond with like the inner Earth, but they don't have the same physical makeup of us, because apparently they're more astral or etheric. And there's a book by this guy named Med Lane, and it's called The Ethership Mystery and Its Solution, and he ties in the Tree of Life to a lot of this. So yeah, this book is called The Ethership Mystery and Its Solution, and it was written in like the 40s or 50s, and it talks about how basically that's what these entities are. And even if you, again, I'll do this throughout here just to show how pervasive it is, but they say that there's intelligences for every sphere or Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. And if you add up the word intelligences, it sits at 6. And 666 is always given this bad number, but yet it's the number, like a lot of people know, it's the number of the sun and the spirit of the sun. And because 6 times 6, 6 is the number of the sun, or Tifereth. 6 times 6 is 36, which implies the 3 sixes, because if you add up 1 through 36, which there's 36 deacons of the zodiac, so it implies the circle. The word the circle, using Beth and Gimel, showing basically a deeper encoding. It's also circle, has the 2 C's with 2 different sounds. But the circle is this whole, it's the manifestation basically of the sun and Saturn. Basically the solar symbol itself is, the point would be like the sun in the center. Saturn would be the rings or time, the ring around the point. That's why Saturn is pretty much the same symbol in manifestation. It's a, but obviously nothing. They used to think a long time ago that Saturn was the last planet, but it's obviously not. The outer, slower moving planets, though, are symbolic of the supernals for that reason, because they're farther out, slower moving, more numinous. Pluto, obviously, though, is now not even considered a planet, but it was always symbolic of the outer reaches, and that's why it's, the ruler of the underworld. Anyway, 666 as intelligences is this. 666 is that whole number of the sun and gravity and consciousness and cohesion, cosmos, basically. And it's all about, like, Gurdjieff, the whole system of Gurdjieff and Uspensky and Maurice Nicole. If you look into their books, it's really good. And I get into it later, but Gurdjieff called what someone has and develops when they're conscious and intelligence, he calls it a magnetic energy center, which is obviously this whole sits thing of the solar energy. And the negative side to sits is obviously the vampirism, or you could even call it parasites. Parasites with shin. And parasites obviously feed off this negative or the positive energy, and there's a lot more to the whole sits thing in regards to all that. I'm gonna have to get into it later. But what it represents, like six, think of the snowflake and how it's emerges in six, like a hexagram, and the different 660 and 600. Again, how that's the sum. The words phrase geometric emergence. Geometric emergence is basically what this is expressing. That's what basically the snowflake shows. And even in Hebrew, snow or snowflake is shaleg, which is 333, and all these are the Kabbalah of 9 chambers. And if you just apply the Hebrew to the English, which again, apply Hebrew to English, it's 666. So anyway, the whole ethership mystery and its solution, I'm not going to read it here, it's really long, but it mentions the tree of life, the worlds, the planes, and how we're simply on the surface, basically. And anyway, I was going to talk about how I'll get into reading the rest of this in a minute, but I was going to talk about how the title itself, Spheres of Initiation, obviously refers to the whole orb experience I had, and THEALLSOV or OF LIGHT, the balls of light, or 666. And the spheres of initiation symbolize obviously this. I think that whatever the UFO thing is, it has stimulated our psyche to not just look towards the skies and towards the future, but in so many other ways, in our own minds, towards certain possibilities, and obviously social bullshit. It's helped us to get beyond. But at the same time, there is too much hope for like being saved or something. Like this whole idea of the whole idea of Jesus even coming to save us is very similar to the aliens coming to save us for whatever reason. And I was going to say that there's a lot to this whole alien subject that needs to be looked at whenever you look into the subject. And basically Fritz Springmeier already talks about it in this book. I ended up finding it in physical copy just yesterday. And it's how the Illuminati create an undetectable, total mind-controlled slave. And I've known about this book for a long time, and I didn't realize he actually mentions Kenneth Grant in it and the OTO. Well, I knew he mentioned the OTO, but not specifically Kenneth Grant and Michael Berteau. But he does talk about alien programming, and there is a lot to this. There's a lot to the fact that the alien situation and subject is so rife with disinformation and shady people. And I mean, I don't want to be looked at as necessarily an authority on any of this, but at the same time, I want people to look through this information, because there's so much, and that's really the big thing here with the UFO thing, is people want evidence, but really there's so much evidence that it ends up being too much evidence to even go through. And then it brings up the fact that there's so much lies and how much money goes to these black projects that it's not like the UFO thing. They'd love people to be focused on, have the alien programming to take them out of their way, basically, when it comes to any other real issue. Not to say that this is a real issue. I think that our humanity and the place we are in the cosmos in regards to other beings, I think there is something to it, and we're being lied to about it. And not only being lied to, but all the money, all the people claiming to be doing something about it, you can't trust them. And all that, they're never going to break us out of the shackles of the banking system and the corruption, and it's just going to be a new, updated, highly high-tech form of artificial intelligence. And I do talk about how basically the alien invasion, AI and alien invasion and artificial intelligence, it's all really one and the same. And again, AI is 11 because it's 1 in 10. 11 is the number of the shells, the Cliffith. And Kenneth Grant, I pulled this up because it's just the definition of the Qliphoth, which he has different definitions in every book, which I'll show.
The Magical Revival. Qliphoth, Hebrew, the plural form of Qliphah, sometimes written Qliphah. The Qliphoth is the name given to a world or plane of soulless entities that, as such, are not truly living, but merely lingering shells of once conscious persons. They are automata such as those that haunt graveyards and seance rooms, and the magician is warned against trafficking with them in any way. Also of the Qliphoth are the more dangerous remnants of a once highly organized elementals that drag out a twilight existence by vampirizing the living. Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God. Qliphoth, the plural form of Qliphah, a harlot. Qliphoth is the name given to a region inhabited by soulless entities, the shells or moldering vehicles of perverted and aborted desires that prolong their twilight existence by preying on the vital fluids of the living. It is the region of vampires, ghouls, demons, and evil spirits, as well as being the habitation of the phantom forms generated by sexual desires and morbid cravings constantly produced by dwellers on earth. Each sephira of the Tree of Life has its corresponding Qliphoth, which is the reflection of the energy which it represents, and these averse sephiroth form what is known as the Tree of Death. Only the well-armed initiate, the adept in fact, can use these power zones with impunity. Cults of the Shadow. Qliphah, singular, and harlot, or companion, hence Qliphoth, the world of shadows, shells, or doubles. The Qliphoth are the averse aspects of the cosmic and human power zones. The Qliphoth haunt the realm of the vampire, the ghoul, and the undead ghost, and of those elementals or non-human spirits that seek to prolong their twilight existence by absorbing the vitality of the living. Night Side of Eden. The plural form of Qliphah, meaning an harlot or strange woman, terms which signify otherness, the shadowy world of shells or reflections. Each sephira of the Tree of Life has its corresponding Qliphah, which is the reflection of the energy which it represents, and these averse power zones or Qliphoth form the Tree of Death. Outside the circles of time. Qliphoth, shells, cortices, the shades of the dead whose names appear in the books of Zion or Thoth, of the Necronomicon, of A.L., and similar grimoires of the Forbidden Wisdom. We are only now beginning to understand that these names contain formulae of immense magical and scientific potency. Hecate's Fountain. The Qliphoth are seductively potent energies which remain over after manifest entities have been dissolved. Hence the Qliphoth are described as shells, cortices, shrouds. Hence also the nostalgia inherent in the formula of atavistic resurgence, which utilizes the shells or husks of memory, past time, for the fecundation of future fantasies. In this sense, the Qliphoth are a potently creative magical force. Outer gateways. Plural form of Qlifa and harlot, a strange woman, a type of the alien or outer ones. The term denotes also the shells or shades of the dead, i.e., those from the other side, with whom congress, as with the strange woman, was considered dangerous. Her archetype is Babylon, the whore being symbolic of outside. Beyond the mauve zone. Here we have both Qlifa and Qliphoth, so literally and harlot. Qlifa is a loaded term implying an outsider. See Parashakti, the equivalent of the biblical strange woman. In tantric terms, the difference between Svashakti and Parashakti. In thelemic terms, the scarlet woman. Qliphoth. Plural form of Qlifa comports further meanings, e.g. shells or cortices. These expressions are commonly applied to the shades of the dead, but there is an alternative interpretation involving those outside the human life wave. And the ninth arch. Qlifa, strange woman in the sense of an harlot, one outside the pale of society, and therefore a type of alien or foreigner. Qliphoth, shells or vehicles of the dead, also the averse or negative aspects of the 10+1 Kabbalistic Sephiroth on of the Tree of Life.
So yeah, since basically that's all those, the letter Q is also, even more recently, of prime importance in the Typhonian tradition, and the Hebrew word is Kaf. It represents not only the Q, or tail, symbolic of the feminine principle, but also the back of the head, the literal meaning of Kaf, which indicates the cerebral locus of the reproductive forces in the human organism. Kaf is thus the source of the reproduced or illusory image. It's basically where the mind fabricates, or not fabricates, but puts all the inputs in together and then reprojects itself. It is therefore an accurate symbol of the phenomenal universe. Kaf also has affinities phonetically and magically with Kafnia and with Kaf. Kaf, the wheel of fortune, and the hand, which is all about time and placement in the matrix. But Kaf, the letter Q, is this whole QAnon thing. I don't think is that important, but the letter Q is symbolic in a lot of ways, with everything, the egg and the breaking of the egg. And if you look up the ancient letter Q, like the ancient renderings of the letter Q, it's basically the on symbol for, like, that you would see with the circle and the line, the binary symbol itself, which turns something on, and has everything to do, again, with this whole AI and the mind. And that's the thing, all this stuff about mind control and the positive and the negative aspect of all of the Kabbalah and 666, it's really all about how you use it. It's a tool. But what was I going to say? So yeah, Fritz Springmeier and the whole alien programming. He says there are numerous scripts for the alien programming. Recent novels and Hollywood movies provide a non-ending pool of programming resources for the programmers. Visual reality headgear and other high-tech methods can easily be incorporated into an alien abduction theme. The following are samples of some of the people who the author Fritz has spent time with, who on one level knew they needed help but didn't know just what they felt uneasy about. Person 1 had been abducted by aliens since she was a small child. Different types of aliens took her. Her mother worked for the CIA at Area 51. Her mother was abusive to her. One of her best friends is a monarch slave. When the aliens come, a bright light appears, and then they abduct her. The aliens she works with the most look exactly like people, and in their handwriting show severe abuse. These benevolent aliens have taken their fetuses, or her fetuses, several times. She has time traveled to their planet. She is dissociative. The government authorities are constantly monitoring and tracking her and have made an effort to besmudge her record so that it appears she is Looney Tunes. This is the type of case that this book's co-author has spent time working with. Doesn't this sound more like human mind control than real aliens? And that is one of the, interpretations, is that the whole alien thing is just a cover for various black projects, which I don't know. Even if that's the case, I still think that there's something fucking going on that they don't have control over or even understanding of, and so that's why they kind of do monitor people who have had these sort of experiences. But you will see in this that some of the orb and the weird dream of the aliens like corresponds with a lot of this stuff, and so it's something to take into account and to take just think about. So person 2, this person hears aliens within his head, which when described sounds like a case of MPD, multiple personality disorder, or DID, dissociative identity disorder. The aliens would take him and force him to have homosexual activities even though he didn't want to participate, but that was okay to him because they were a superior race, and if these benevolent aliens, which are so far advanced beyond us, want to have sex with him, that is their prerogative. See, and I think that he does give a warning that this book might trigger some people, especially if they're programmed or whatever. But I do think that a lot of this book and a lot of Fritz Springmeier's stuff should just be looked at with, your own sort of a lot of discernment, because even in one of his videos, he's like, oh, well, some people on this stage are even double agents, and then he coughs. So I think he knows what he's doing. But person 3, this person worked at Area 51, has a photographic memory throughout his entire MPD system. He realizes that he is MPD. His best friend claims to be an alien, a god of sorts, and is known by both this person and Fritz to be part of naval intelligence. The Navy and the naval intelligence is where a lot of mind control and voice to skull type studies are being done under. This best friend acts more like a handler than an alien, and this Area 51 worker gives his best friend total allegiance. This man has all kinds of alien-type stories which sound in many cases like programming. This person admits that his family is Illuminati, and the front altars say he has watched Illuminati rituals as an adult but hasn't participated. He shows signs of severe abuse. He is afraid to talk about trauma-based mind control but loves to talk about aliens. In fact, all 3 of the persons discussed on this page shied away from talking about the monarch mind control as if it were something not important, but they all love to talk about aliens. And the list of interesting people like this could go on. When mind-controlled slaves who have alien programming are being abducted by the intelligence agencies for their use and for programming, here are some of the details of how and what occurs. A bright light is shined into their house. See, that's exactly what happened for me. They have been hypnotically conditioned to view this light as a flying saucer, whether it is a helicopter or something else. As the New World Order does have flying saucers, sometimes the real thing is used. Men in black, just like in satanic ritual abuse cases, are often associated with abductions. And the slaves frequently speak about shadows in the mind. The slaves are taken to rooms where examining tables with white sheets and x-ray machines, headgear, and medical equipment is in place. See, and I remember it being a white room and that what was like a dream. And a lot of people, their family is involved in military or government or whatever. And in my case, that is the case as well. So I think that they are testing on humans in all sorts of ways. Humans are testing on humans, basically. And some of it is, they try to put false memories type, and they like to make it seem like it's not what it is, and they'll have they'll rationalize it and say it's for the betterment. But really, I think that a lot of it is what you could call parasites using humans as vessels for vampirism, and that's what they claim. That's basically what they claim, whether they're aliens or demons or whatever, or even just thought forms. That's basically what this all is a parasitic farming situation, and the fact that no one wants to like look at very few people want to look at this, and then they're not only their own reasons for looking at it, but they want some sort of validation of something, and they don't want to look at all of the possibilities, because I think that basically it's a little bit of all of this. It's a little bit of, yeah, there is something going on that we don't understand fully that does tie into some of the more occult aspects of reality. Like, and I say occult not in the dark sense, but just in the fact we don't know. There's a lot we still don't know, and it's not even just because the government is keeping it from us or secret societies, but because there's so much information. It takes fucking time. And once you get the information, what are you going to do? You're going to try to tell somebody? Well, you better hope they have the time and concern. Otherwise, you're just going to, you'll see that it's just you, and then you'll be like, well, what's the point? Unless you're like me and you're like, oh, well, I might as well say something or do something about it, because otherwise it's just going to get forgotten or lost, or someone else will come along and find it, but who knows if they will put it out here. So anyway, a bright light has shined into their house, blah, blah, blah. The alien equipment has gotten more high-tech over the last 40 years. The aliens wear suits that are full of occult symbology. The people are restrained with clamps and electrical shock, and energy is used on them. That sentence, the alien equipment has gotten more high-tech over the last 40 years. Well, one of the big points in ufology is how, as technology has advanced, so has the technology of the aliens, so called, and maybe that's just our psyches in the perception, and but I don't know. I mean, I did actually just find Passport to Magonia as well just 2 days ago, and I've known of that book, but I didn't have it. And Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallée, it's all about the history of the folklore all the way back to like the early, 1500s. UFOs were seen even then. And Carl Jung's book, Flying Saucers, is also really important, because it takes into account the psychological, or the fact that this may be the collective unconscious somehow like bursting the seams of the waking state and the dream state, the twilight zone, so to speak. And obviously the twilight zone and the mauve zone that Kenneth Grant talks about is pretty much the same thing. The twilight being the region between waking and dreaming and sleep, or Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness, as they call it. And the mauve zone is basically, it's like the region outside of the color spectrum, or the doorway outside of space-time. And Fritz Riedmeier talks a lot about the symbolism of colors and mind control and all that in this book as well, which is interesting. But I'll just go on, because some of this is really interesting. The people are restrained with clamps, and electrical shock and energy is used on them. They are told they are receiving information. They are giving tracking implants and other implants. All of the three above persons receive information from the aliens regularly. Almost all of the elements of monarch trauma-based mind control appear in the abduction accounts, especially in the psychological features of the victim. The victims of alien abduction programming feel suicidal after they talk too much. They have headaches, sleep difficulties, nightmares, obsessive thoughts, a fear of hypnosis, trapped feelings, and paranoia. During their abductions, the aliens use drugs, thought transfers, and painful medical procedures. The aliens use language that parallels the messages given to SRA victims. just changed the language from Satan is in charge to the aliens are in charge. Cattle mutilations where the blood has been drained are associated with abductions. There's documented accounts where cattle mutilations have been connected to satanic cults using helicopters. The victims of aliens are forced to be impregnated, and then the fetus is repeatedly taken. The aliens are repeatedly telling these victims that a Holocaust is soon to come. Another strange phenomena that occurs, or that others, and this author has noted, is that these victims of alien abduction seem to know each other, much in the same way that victims of Illuminati mind control seem to know each other. And the aliens seem to know everything about the victims. The victims have amnesia of their abductions. The memories of their abductions are hidden in altered states of consciousness that hypnosis sometimes can pull up. Most victims are afraid of hypnosis or can't be hypnotized. They have been hypnotized not to allow anyone else to hypnotize them. To give credit where due, Bowart's Operation Mind Control's Researchers Edition 1994 has an excellent appendix with charts which compare SRA mind control victims and alien abduction victims. The charts reveal how similar the two groups are. In preparing these paragraphs, we have used this chart as a basis for how we wrote the last two paragraphs up. However, the co-authors' experiences in working with abduction victims match the findings of Bowart. Do aliens from another planet exist? They may or may not. It is not a real issue. We have to face what is already on this planet. Fritz has several tapes of aliens of different types talking, which were obtained from abduction survivors, and their voices sound demonic, and they're saying that we have been alive on this planet for many years. One said something like he's been on Earth for 500,000 years. If an alien lived on this planet for 500,000 years, when does he get residence status? My, if that is true, he is no alien, we are. But one thing is certain, this planet contains some very slimy, evil creatures who are either real non-humans or very deceptive dark humans. And that's a huge point. And that's Laura Knight Jadzic's point about a lot of this, is that psychopaths not only may be of a different sort of stock, but that psychopaths are a bigger threat than aliens, and that they're everywhere. The Bible calls them demons and reprobate men. The four most popular origins of supposed aliens on Earth are all star groups relatively close to our solar system. They are I don't know if that's supposed to be the Pleiades or what, because the Pleiades, or Pleiades, known as the 7 or 9 sisters, because there are 9 stars, of which 7 of which are visible. Sirius, the Dog constellation, the Orion constellation, and the twin stars of Zeta Reticuli, which twin stars were amazingly charted by Chinese astrologers in 3000 BC. Fritz, the co-author of this book, kept an open mind on the issue. Could there be any benevolent aliens? That would be basically the angels, and some people obviously think that the Qliphoth or the Nephilim, the fallen ones, are the aliens or the demons or whatever, and that I don't necessarily think that it's that black and white, that all aliens are demons, because technically angels or higher beings, devas almost, or would be angels, and they're not terrestrial like us. And even biblically, we are also fallen, and we have to be raised up, or resurrected in a way, and rejoined back to God. So you could say we're demonic in a lot of ways. I mean, just look around. Some abductees believed that their aliens were benevolent, but when they are debriefed, they admit that mind control and sexual molestation is carried out by the aliens. Fritz has concluded with other investigators on this question, there are no benevolent aliens. In fact, the only aliens that may be around are what have been known as demons. People who have participated in high-level Illuminati ceremonies report the presence of creatures that look like the various aliens. This whole subject is dealt with in another book by Fritz Springmeier. Some points might be briefly brought about. Fritz has amassed a great deal of evidence that the elite have built flying saucers. Note how this controlled media always links aliens with flying saucers and UFOs. This is an entire book in itself. However, the bottom line is that at least most, if not all, of the alien abductions are simply part of the New World Order's mind control. Which, once you realize how pervasive the 666 code is, just look. The alien alien abduction itself is 666. The whole alien thing I've decoded, and I haven't even released but like 2% of it. But the whole shebang, and it's not just 666, it's the whole Kabbalah. And that's why Fritz Springmeier, he does connect the fact that the Kabbalah is the template for a lot of this mind control programming. But remember, mind control is it's basically yoga. Like, you either control your mind or someone else does, or I mean, it's controlled. It's swept up in these programs that our society has now is almost completely insulated in what they call what in the Matrix and simulacra and simulation by Jean Baudrillard called the pure simulacra. And the can be either Teth or Tao, and that's how things get kind of further like occulted, because you have to just take into account that there's a sort of secrecy embedded in the Hebrew code. But the pure simulacra 666, and that's kind of the antithesis to a phrase my friend came up with, which she called it the natural matrix. And she would say that like for years, we have a false matrix overlaying the natural matrix. Well, the natural matrix is 666. Pure simulacra is this, everything is so repeated to the point that it's lost its source. And so we live in a society where everything just about is a complete program designed to manipulate you and guide you, mainly to give them profit or work for them, basically. And so yeah, there is a mind control code to a lot of this, but that's not to discount the fact that obviously there's something going on that even the high-level military, and not even just military, these other groups and stuff, they're not even privy to a lot of this. It seems like, at least on, it's so compartmentalized. They might know a little bit here, a little bit there, but that's why I don't see anybody. That's why I feel like I have to say all this and do all this, because I don't see anyone else tying all this stuff together. And so yeah, you could read all this. It's almost over anyway, but I'm gonna start reading this one pretty much. This was supposedly the Great Seal of the Trilateral Commission. You've got the 7-headed dragon holding the lightning bolts. The common gray alien is not the only type of alien that has been reported by various witnesses. Another race is the reptilians, which may or may not be working with or a part of the greys in some way. And the reptilians, that's a thing. It's such a like meme now and a joke. And obviously, even what's his name, David Icke, even talks about how it's really, a lot of it is symbolic, and it has to do with the subconscious mind, the reptilian brain. And even in Hebrew, the word reptilian or reptilians is 666. That's what I think Kenneth Grant helps to understand a lot of what he calls the draconian tradition, this fascination with the serpents and the dragons and the chthonic or dark side, the underworld. It's part of the whole Tantra and the Vama Marg or left-hand path, and it's important to unify or balance that, the whole shadow side and all that. But at the same time, it's important to be able to discern when it's necessary and when it's not. The reptilians go back very far in mythology, and the farthest back I could trace the possibility of the Greys existing before modern times is the Hopi and Indians' account of ant people who had large bulbous eyes and large heads. And then there are the Wangina, aboriginal mythical cloud and rain spirits who influenced the landscape and its inhabitants during dream time. The reptilians extend at least back to the roots of civilization in Sumeria, and the serpent is present in nearly every culture in some way. The Great Seal of the Trilateral Commission above shows a seven-headed dragon surrounding a hexagram or Metatron's cube, or black cube. The seven-headed dragon is symbolic of the beast of Revelation 17:3, and the geometric figure probably represents some sort of balance or perfection, or again the Masonic cube. The 6 hexagrams imply a 666, and the Latin phrase Noster Ordo Seclorum means our order of the ages. Ego terminatio, ego fides, ego sceptrum roughly translates to I or we terminate, I we let go, I we believe, and I we rule. What a fitting symbol for a group that manipulates political decisions and events from behind the scenes, which has also rightly been named the shadow government. As Kennedy once stated, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. Compartmentalization has been key in the efforts of the military and intelligence agencies, really working to ensure only their own survival at the expense of some collateral damage, which is the general public. I didn't formulate that sentence very well, but they claim it's, we're working for your safety and security and for the benefit of everybody, and they'll say, you wouldn't be safe without it. Well, the border has been wide open. I don't see, and that's politicians. It's like, well, you're not doing it. All I see is everyone rationalizing everything and looking for, where's my cut? And what do I get for it? What do I get out of it? I'll do anything. The prevalence of UFO sightings could mean many things, and it is important to look at it as a whole and considering how our outlets change over time and therefore how our outlets are now. Again, our programming, our cultural operating system, as Terence McKenna calls it, determines what we do with information and how we respond to it. I recently read an article I read a long time ago when I first got into ufology and the occult. It is by William Milton Cooper, whose death was the final result of numerous attacks on his life to silence him after releasing his book Behold a Pale Horse in 1991. I want to reiterate something Bill summarized regarding the current human-alien situation in Chapter 12, The Secret Government, page 233. These are the conclusions, basically, he saw with the information he came across, being a Navy intelligence person and releasing some of the information he came across. 1. The secret power structure may believe that by our own ignorance or by divine decree, planet Earth will self-destruct sometime in the near future. These men sincerely believe that they are doing the right thing in their attempt to save the human race. It is terribly ironic that they have been forced to take as their partner an alien race which is itself engaged in a monumental struggle for survival. Many moral and legal compromises may have been made in this joint effort. These compromises were made in error and must be corrected. Those responsible should be brought to account for their actions. I can understand the fear and urgency that must have been instrumental in the decision not to tell the public. Obviously, I disagree with that decision. Throughout history, small but powerful groups of men have consistently felt that they alone were capable of deciding the fate of millions. Throughout history, they have been wrong. Full disclosures to the public should be made, and we should proceed to save the human race together. Or 2, we are being manipulated by a joint human-alien power structure which will result in a one-world government and the partial enslavement of the human race. This has been deemed necessary to solve the elemental question, who will speak for planet Earth? It has been decided that man is not mature enough in his evolutionary development to be trusted to interact properly with an alien race. We have already enough trouble between the different human races, so what would happen if a totally alien extraterrestrial race was introduced? Have our leaders decided to lock us in the playpen? The only way to prevent this scenario is to cause an evolutionary leap in consciousness, a paradigm shift for the entire race. I have no idea how this can be done. It needs to be done very quickly and very quietly. And I personally think that learning the Kabbalah will do that. It helps to cause you to fucking see so much information and be able to process it a lot more without having information overload. With the whole fact, the tree of life and the fractal nature of, David Bohm calls it the implicate order and enfoldment, how data enfolds and unfolds based on these numerical principles. Like Buckminster Fuller, he talks about a lot of this stuff too with vector equilibrium. Studying this has basically helped. I think if this was sort of less occulted and more, people of younger ages learned this stuff earlier on, and then were able to discern, obviously, and go through this information piecemeal, piece by piece, and not be fed it piecemeal by authority figures for profit concerns and whatnot. Again, I think that the biggest key to all of this, to peace and war and whatnot, is education. 3. The government has been totally deceived, and we are being manipulated by an alien power, which will result in the total enslavement and or destruction of the human race. We must use any and every means available to prevent this from happening. 4. If none of the above are true, something else may be happening which is beyond our ability to understand at this moment. We must force disclosure of all the facts, discover the truth, and act upon it. The situation in which we find ourselves is due to our own actions or inactions over the last 44 years. Because it is our own fault, we are the only ones who can change the future events. Education seems to be a major part of the solution. Or 5. There is always the possibility that I was used, that the whole alien scenario is the greatest hoax in history designed to create an alien enemy from outer space in order to expedite the formation of a one-world government. Through ignorance or misplaced trust, we as a people have abdicated our role as watchdog of our government. Our government was founded of the people, for the people, by the people. There was no mention or intent ever to abdicate our role and place our total trust in a handful of men who meet secretly to decide our fate. In fact, the structure of our government was designed to prevent that from ever happening. If we had done our jobs as citizens, we would never have reached that point. Most of us are completely ignorant as to even the most basic functions of our government. And again, schools, public school systems, they teach you like a primer on government, but they don't teach you about how it really works on the local level or how taxes work. They'll tell you how to write a check, maybe a little bit about the stock market, the government from the U.S., the origins of the U.S. on up. Well, the Magna Carta and whatnot too, but shit's changed in the last 50 years, and they have to keep it so politically correct and positive. It's got to be positive. I mean, that's the problem, is people will scoot anything that seems negative under the rug so it'll fester and get worse, and somehow that's positive instead of facing the problem, the negative. That's why the negative symbol, I've always thought of it, it's like a closed eye. People just close their eyes, and somehow that's positive. It's just ignorance. The most important information that you need to determine your future actions is that the New World Order calls for the destruction of the sovereignty of nations, including the United States. The New World Order cannot and will not allow our Constitution to continue to exist. The New World Order will be a totalitarian social system. We will be the slaves shackled to a cashless system of economic control. If the documentation that I viewed while I was in naval intelligence is true, then what you have just read is probably closer to the truth than anything ever written. I can assure you beyond any shadow of a doubt that even if aliens are not real, the technology is real. Anti-gravity craft exist and human pilots can fly them. I and millions of others have seen them. They are metal, they are machines, they come in different shapes and sizes, and they are obviously intelligently guided. See, and obviously I think there's more than just the metal and the machines. There's plasma, they can even create whole holograms and whatnot to make you think that you're seeing something. And of course then a lot of this all gets into the new technologies that the military has been developing, which you could call non-lethal weapons, but really a lot of it's just mental machinery and mind control, satellite EEG, mind reading type things. These conclusions are a general outline of what is to be considered, although it is likely that if one alien race is involved, then there are probably at least one or a few more. Whatever the case is, it is undeniably clear that something is going on. I really can't think of much more to say on this topic except that it took me 2 days to go through all the YouTube videos since January 1st, 2012 to determine if they were worth listing. There are many more on YouTube and elsewhere, but many are obvious hoaxes. The ones I posted are nearly all from different people all around the world. I know that some are probably fake or military craft, but most are undoubtedly unidentifiable and unexplainable except as probable alien craft. Whatever they are doing that is of such importance this year can still only be speculated at, but this list may prove to be relevant as evidence in case something does. Nothing too major obviously happened, and like I said in the last video, I think 2012 was a more symbolic year, just in the fact that the whole egg thing and the egg in 2011 manifesting and causing me to basically see all this information come about really quickly. I think that has to do, at least personally, with symbolism and the meaning of 2012 as this sort of change in human history. Also, the whole situation of aliens, I think that another point to consider is that aside from other beings, there's also our higher selves, or ourselves even in the future or from other timelines. And Crowley even says that before trying to evoke or invoke any entities or any sort of magical work, you're supposed to attain the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, which is to basically ascend from Malkuth to Tifereth on the whole tree of life in terms of grades and whatnot, which is to say you're supposed to find that whole magnetic energy center, the 666, the solar point of your geometric emergence, your manifestation. Otherwise, you are open to parasites, and that's why the circle being 666, it's all about the circle. The magic circle basically is your aura, and it's your identity, it's your egg. Again, magic is all about the control of the Cliffith, or the shells, the numbers. So you don't really want to get so... That's what I learned about all this in going so deep into trying to figure out this stuff about aliens and like what the hell was that orb that came in my room and what is all this stuff, what's going on. I kind of had to go way out into those depths, into the abyss, so to speak, and to come back and realize that no, the aliens or the others, it's not all out there, it's all actually within you. Again, no one's going to save you, only you can help yourself, and it's all about Malkuth, really. It's coming back down to earth, being who you are, enjoying existence as it is. That's not to say I don't still have interest in deciphering and figuring out what's going on, and now I just have a more deeper, clearer understanding, and I see the geometry. I see how the geometry kind of fits in, and again, it's all about time and perspective, and we just need time to grow and time to look back. Time.